Hey, sensory siblings, do you own a pair of these? They come in many different colors and even different form factors, but they all work more or less the same way. But how do noise canceling headphones actually work? Have you ever wondered? Well, if you have, you're in the right place because the sensory nerd is here to make it make sense. Roll the intro. So, the science behind noise canceling headphones is actually pretty cool, but to understand it, I need to teach you a little bit of sound physics first. But don't worry, it's not too complicated, and I'll use pop culture references to help it make sense. So, the first part of our lesson, what is sound? Well, simply put, sound is pressure waves moving through a medium. And this medium could be air, it could be water, it could be solid objects, but ultimately it is a pressure wave moving through a medium. Now, the word wave, you probably most readily think of waves in water. And that's a very appropriate visual because that is literally what is happening. In the water, you can see the wave. You can see that ebb and that flow, the peak, the crest of the wave and the trough of the wave. And the same thing is happening in the air, but we can't see that. So sound waves travel through the air primarily, or that's how we usually hear them. But obviously, you can still hear sound underwater. And if you put your ear to like a table or to a floor, and if somebody was like making vibrations, you would hear that because it's traveling through the medium of the floor. So all waves are measured in hertz. This is the frequency. And the frequency means that literally the frequency of peaks of the wave over time. So the simplest version is 1 hertz wave, which means that there is one peak and one trough every second. So it's like that. Obviously, a faster wave, or shorter distance between the peaks, is a higher frequency because it's a higher, the shorter the distance between the peaks, the more of them there's going to be in that length of time. Therefore, it's faster, and that's a higher frequency. So this 1 hertz here we see is just a very basic ebb and flow. But we talked about water and waves in water. And so if I turn up the frequency here, now you can see we've literally got that wave that you're used to seeing in water with the ebbs and the flows. And again, now you can see, because before it was literally this big wide wave like this, just kind of flipping. So now we've got this again. So now you've got the distance between the peaks, and you can see it. And so here, for example, I've now turned up the frequency and I've got the sound off, which is why you're not hearing it. But now I've got it up to 900 hertz. So the visualization here is not exact. It's not perfect. It's a simulation, it's a rough simulation. But here you can see 900 hertz. It's showing there's a lot more peaks along that same length of time. That gives you an idea of the visualization of it. These are the waves moving through the medium. And when we're talking about sound, sound waves are moved by most often a speaker cone or a speaker device. And we use my highly scientific prop here, this lid, but a real speaker is going to look like that. So you're probably used to seeing something like that, like this kind of concave bowl shape, sometimes with a nub in the middle of it. And so what's happening is that it's oscillating. It's kind of moving in and out. And each time it moves forward, it's pushing a pressure wave. And then it comes back, it's getting ready to push the next pressure wave. And if that is staying the same speed, you're going to hear the same pitch and the same volume. So this is 1 hertz. But the other thing to note that this is the reason why you're not hearing anything, 2 reasons actually. So smartphone speakers are not designed to actually reproduce low frequencies well. This one happens to be, however, subsonic or infrasonic. Anything below 20 hertz is subsonic or infrasonic. Human ears are actually not capable of hearing it. Human ears are capable of hearing from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. And the high end will reduce as you get older or if you incur hearing loss. But this is the most basic form, 1 hertz, one oscillation. So here for our 1 hertz wave, we have a very simple, this is our prop speaker cone. And it goes like this. that's our 1 hertz, our 1 vibration, our 1 oscillation per second. And again, when we turn up the increase the frequency, increase the speed, it increases the pitch, and you would have more like this. Or for a really high frequency, it would be like this. So you might be thinking, well, this is a quick little side lesson. So volume comes from the amplitude of the wave, and the amplitude increases, or the volume increases, by increasing the amplitude. So if you only have this, that's kind of quiet. But if you have the same speed of the oscillation, but the speaker cone is traveling further, that's moving more air at the same speed, that's going to sound louder versus the same speed at a shorter distance, which is going to be quieter. For further context, the lowest note on a standard 88 key piano is A0, which is 27.5 hertz. This is what it sounds like. So you can hear that's pretty low. That is almost the lowest note that humans can hear. So that's what that note sounds like on the piano. Inside the piano, there is a string being hit by a hammer that is vibrating. But since we can't see that string, it's an electric piano, here is that same note on a stringed instrument, an electric bass guitar. So you can see it doesn't quite match exactly the visualization, but you see there's your oscillations, your peak and your trough. So again, we're talking about the displacement of air in the form of pressure waves. Now, this can obviously happen, as we saw, by the example of a low frequency bass string vibrating or oscillating. It can also be, we know higher pitched things like a clap is a snapping sound. It's a kind of a higher pitch, and that is just a single oscillation. Now, again, we're talking about if you move something through the air, even if it's a thin thing like this drumstick, you move it through the air, it will have a sound. It will make the air, displace the air at a certain frequency, and watch, we're going to do this and I'm going to map it for you. So listen, watch and listen. So that is still a lower frequency, but it's a little higher than the bass string, obviously. And that would be this. So that's the frequency and the note. And then we're going to do a high-pitched example. So again, we're talking about if you have one motion that makes a single wave, single oscillation, it's a sound and then it stops. But if you think of like when you're jumping rope, if you've ever been skipping rope and you do that thing where you do it really quickly, you might notice that kind of like that sound because the rope is whipping through the air constantly. So that kind of sounds like this. So again, that would be this frequency and this note. So there's an example. You have one oscillation, or if it keeps going, then you have that sustained pressure wave. Now, it's difficult to make this example with a cell phone because cell phone speakers are not designed to play low frequency music out of their speakers. So at this one here, you can see I'm up to 73 hertz now and you can't hear anything. That's difficult. So you see if I'm playing with it, it's changing how slow the wavelength is, and it changes the pitch. So now you understand the basics of pressure waves and frequency and how that works. So how do we get to the noise cancellation part? Well, I have to teach you another term quickly before we get to that. Constructive interference and destructive interference. So to go back to our little speaker cone props, again, highly scientific. Here we had, the basic is just this, but if you have two speakers or two objects that are pushing sound pressure waves, if they're doing this, if they're moving in unison at the same frequency and the same amplitude, they're pushing twice as much air in the same way, that actually doubles the air that's being moved, so that doubles the volume and makes it louder. That is called constructive interference because those two waveforms are the same and they go together and it increases them. So that, in essence, is this guy, your Uno pick up 2 card. So you've got two waves, you're combining them together, it doubles it. Simple, right? So we are talking about noise cancellation. So you might be thinking, well, that's this guy, right? Because this is the miss a turn card. So this is the cancel, but that's not quite it. This is not actually the right concept. This miss a turn cancel card would actually be the equivalent of hitting the mute button. This would simply stop the speaker cones from moving at all. They're not moving air, they're not creating air pressure waves, they're not making sound. But that's the cancel a turn card essentially, and this is noise cancellation. So what's the difference? So again, back to our little speaker cones. So that is our constructive interference, that is our mute, but the third option is to have the two waves inverted, which is the equivalent of this guy, your Uno reverse card. You're literally flipping the phase to have them at opposites. So one's at its peak when the other's at its trough, and vice versa. Peak and trough, peak and trough. And if you think of it like +1, -1, and 0, here, these are going to net out to 0. And then they're going to net out to 0. They're going to net out to 0. They're going to net out to 0. So that is your destructive interference and your inverted oscillations, your inverted waves. Or, for one more fun little pop culture reference, but so how do noise canceling headphones achieve this, right? That concept seems simple enough. Well, on noise canceling headphones, whether they are these guys or these guys, they have microphones on the outside. And that microphone listens to what's happening externally around. And, again, the computer chips, the brain, the electronic brains in there, they hear the external, and they might hear this frequency while your music inside is, nice, just chill. And outside you've got all this other stuff happening. So the microphone hears that and it recognizes what frequency that is. Again, the frequency is the speed of the vibration. I'll hear that. And so inside, it's still going to give you the simple the vibration of whatever, the frequency of whatever you're actually listening to. And then outside, it's going to take that. It's going to say, oh, there's your +1. So inside, we need a -1 for this. And that's where it's going to flip the phase. And that way, you're hearing the +1 coming in. The headphones are giving you the -1. So between the two of them, again, they're netting out to 0. And so that reduces that signal. And you're still left with the signal of what you're actually trying to hear. Now, there's one more piece to this puzzle because for some people with sensory sensitivity issues, like myself, sometimes the process of this active noise cancellation, which again, you're active because it's listening to one thing and it's generating this new inverse wave to counteract it. That is active noise cancellation. But this process does have an effect, and it creates some discomfort sometimes. Because the headphones are constantly pumping out an anti-wave to combat the noise, it can create a pressure sensation at the inner ear. Even though the sound is technically being cancelled, the brain interprets this lack of natural background vibration as a sort of phantom pressure in the inner ear. And this might be why some people prefer white, brown, or pink noise to cancel out frequencies as opposed to blocking them. But more on that in another video. But again, that's active noise cancellation. That is the microphone listening to the external noise and creating the inverted wave and transmitting that inside. So what's the alternative? If noise cancellation is uncomfortable, what do we do? Well, there's passive noise cancellation. What's that? That's these guys. So obviously, there's no electrical or moving parts in construction earmuffs. They are purely mechanical. And the way that they work is a mixture of, again, we talked about speakers having low frequency, bass, and then high frequency for like the tweeters. Well, these also have 2 layers to them, arguably 3 actually. So The external, the hard plastic, that is the part that blocks the higher frequencies because they will bounce off of it. Lower vibration frequencies, like your bass, the low hertz, those are more felt, but they are also more captured by foam. And so you see this black bit here, this is foam, and then on the inside you can see there's more foam. So the combination of the foam and the hard plastic, that creates the high and low frequency blocking, but there's a third component. So when you put these on, they have this spring kind of thing in them, they have a pressure, they push against your head, and they create an air seal. And so that is the third piece that kind of blocks out a bit of the mid-frequency. So you've got 3 layers of blocking sound waves, sound pressure waves, from getting outside into your, and plus you get the bonus pressure of squeezing against your head gently. This can be calming for some people with sensory sensitivities, like myself. Autistic people often find these comforting and comfortable. And I sometimes do as well. When I'm really tired, I actually can't handle noise cancellation. And these actually do, admittedly, so these do have that seal effect as well. When you put these on, they're also squeezing against your head slightly and they create a bit of a seal. It's not quite as good as those ones are, but it's better than nothing. So if you've ever felt a funny feeling while your noise cancellation is turned on, that might be why. That inverted pressure wave that's hitting your ears. Well, that's our lesson for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. Feel free to drop a comment to let me know your favorite thing from today's lesson. Hey RF, what was your favorite part of the lesson today? RF's feeling shy today. Maybe next time. And of course, the more you understand your senses, the easier it is to trust them. And we all want to be able to trust our senses. So stay curious, and I'll see you on the next episode.